can you start by telling us a little bit about this relationship and its breakdown?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and I'm so sorry to hear what you've gone through. This situation, nearly ruined my life, and for a long time it did. I had an ex-boyfriend who was my first love. I'd been very innocent and I was very trusting. And when I suggested we break up, he suggested one last night of drinking, which I had never even been drunk before, proceeded to get me blacked out, intoxicated, and then filmed himself having sex with me while I was not even consciously able to consent, and then released those several years later, once my now wife and I had started our YouTube channel. It was horrible, horribly devastating. I think the words that I would describe were that it really made me want to not be alive.
Yeah, I can fully sympathize with that. But try and talk about the emotions that you went through when you found out about the images he had filmed.
It felt like any passive threats of, I hate you, I hate that you broke up with me, I want to ruin your life, was achieved. It felt like that moment that I saw it, like getting kicked in the chest, and the breath knocked out of me, and I felt horror, devastation, and again, a desire to disappear.
I mean, you were 18 at the time of this happening. I mean, I was in my mid-30s and probably, in that respect, able a bit more to deal with this. I mean, what impact has it had on you, for the rest of your life so far?
It happened to me when I was 18. I found out when I was 22. And other trauma related to this guy happened from the age of 19. And it is only just now at 30, after a decade of therapy, that I truly feel like I am coming out of the tunnel to the other side. It feels like 19 to 30 is just a blip on the radar of me doing anything and everything I can to numb myself enough to stay on this earth and keep going.
What sort of things were you using to cope with the emotional roller coaster?
Yeah, I became an alcoholic by the time I was 22. So using alcohol, within 6 months of finding out about the videos, I was nearly drinking myself to death, waking up in the ER with nearly deadly amounts of alcohol in my system, cannabis, anything. Thank God I didn't get into anything harder, or I definitely would not be here, because there were so many times where I just wanted to check out. This nightmare was so unending. And then when I would sleep, I would have these night terrors, or I'd wake up screaming or dreaming that my ex was trying to rape me or kill me. And it was just, it followed every moment, conscious or not. And so I did anything I could do to try to escape from that.
Do you still worry today who might have seen the images, who knows whether they still exist somewhere?
Well, I know that they still exist. We were never able to fully, remove them from the internet. And so, of course, I have worried about who might have seen the videos and the images. I think about it every day, and I just had to eventually try to keep moving on with my life. It's kind of like what you were saying with what happened to you. You have to learn to live with that fear. It doesn't ever really go away. And it's hard to describe to people who haven't experienced it themselves what that feels like, and the anxiety it causes, and the lack of control it feels you have over your own life and your own image and people's perception of you, which is incredibly damaging.
It almost feels embarrassing to talk about, doesn't it? And it's insane when you think, why should we be embarrassed? Let's talk about the fact that you managed to win a landmark court case, though. How did you fight that? Talk us through that process.
Sure. Well, if it had not been for our incredible attorneys, McAllister Oliverius and Anne Oliverius, believing in our case and believing before there was even the law that there was something we could do, that she believed in my story enough to fight for me. That is something that so many victims need, is just somebody to believe that they are deserving of justice and that they are deserving of a relief of that shame. And so I went in fully trusting, whoever is going to take on this case after being rejected by so many attorneys, surely this is the right way to go. And she had warned us it might take a year or two or more to win this case. And it ended up taking almost 5 years. And we just never gave up. I think Anne and I have a similar spirit in terms of fighting back. I don't take injustice well. I never have for other people. Part of my wife and I's, YouTube is trying to help people who've been victims of bullying or homophobia. And so when this happened to me, my wife just wanted it to disappear. And I said, I have to fight back. And someday, I don't care how long it takes, if this story, going public with it, can help raise awareness or help somebody who's a victim not quite feel so alone and maybe keep staying on this planet and fighting, then this will all be worth it. Granted, I didn't know, how big of a toll it would take in the midst, but I knew that fighting back was the right thing to do, and that I could survive that fight.
What happened as a result of the court case?
I got an apology from my ex. I won damages. For me, that acknowledgement from the perpetrator, and because he got to be anonymous, which was so hard for me, just having that acknowledgement was huge. And in a much bigger than myself way, it inspired so many victims to go forward, to get help from the police, no matter how frustrating that would be. It started kind of a snowball in this legal realm of starting to have a semblance of justice. It's still not where it needs to be, but it began an ongoing cascade of pursuits of justice. There's now people that are in prison because of that law. And we've had fans of ours reach out and say, because of you helping to get this law passed, it helped inspire me to go to the police and share what had happened to me. Or even someone else say, because of this law, my ex got put back in prison for the assault he committed against me and the videos he took. So those kinds of stories, even just one, make everything I went through worth it, because, I know that hopefully somebody, as we all keep fighting back, somebody else's case will be the next landmark that helps get even more protections in place, or even harsher sentences for perpetrators,
When you hear of the fact that incidents of revenge porn have doubled in the past couple of years, when you learn that the threat of revenge porn, that's what I had, the threat of it, as opposed, I think, to it happening. I don't know, perhaps I will never know whether he posted videos online. But when you find out that nothing essentially can be done about that, and that actually revenge porn is still happening at double the rate it was happening 2 years ago, how does that make you feel after everything you've been through?
It's so hard. It's so hard to know that this is like an epidemic and it's continuing to get worse. Sadly, I knew this would happen. I knew that it would become, the proportions would get so much greater and the impact would be far wider. I felt like I was talking about this years before people really cared at a societal level. So unfortunately, I don't find this surprising, but I think that it should incentivize lawmakers that much more to create laws that will help victims and to to make the punishments harsher. You know, clearly what's happening is not enough of a deterrent, and there's so much work that still needs to be done. I find those statistics devastating.
If you had a message for people watching this today who might either watch free porn sites or who might be in a relationship where they are comfortably sharing pictures of themselves with their other half, I mean, have you got advice that you'd like, a message you'd like to tell the world?
I think that you should have every right to, it all comes down to consent. So I think that if you are watching something that in the slightest seems it could be non-consensual, because there is an energy, you know, when you're seeing content that is not consensual, it has a vibe. But also when you're seeing, say, something else where a couple consensually film something together, it does not negate the impact that this has. It does not negate just the grave suffering that it causes. I think that we should have these things gatekept. There needs to be, instead of this free access kind of content, we need to have measures in place where content that you're seeing is consensual, and those hoops have been crossed, those boxes have been checked. But then on the flip side, people in relationships deserve to be free of shame of filming something with a partner. You know, we need to continue to put the onus on the perpetrator that sharing this content is wrong, because it's not going to stop. Sharing this content is wrong, and it has devastating consequences, both for the victim and the perpetrator. I think the more we incentivize these perpetrators having harsher punishments, the more we could get a handle on this. But if you are consuming content, say for free, perhaps if you have the means, invest in content where people are creating safe, consensual, for lack of a better word, uplifting, that's not degrading content, because it might be the difference between being on a site where, you know, exploitation is happening versus a site where people are showing up and wanting to be a part of that content. That was what was revolutionary for me in my own healing, was realizing the power for me was in consent. And so if this has happened to you, if you're a victim, you consented to your recording. That is very different than having your partner then share that content. Just because you filmed a tape does not mean you are deserving of any shame, does not mean you are deserving of this to happen. You have every right to do what you want with your body. It is not okay for someone to share that without your consent. And that's the message that I would get across. And you're not alone.
No, you are not alone. Chrissy, thank you so much for joining me. Stay in touch, because we've still got a big battle ahead of us. And I think we women need to stick together on this. Chrissy Chambers there, revenge porn campaigner.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.